Welcome to the Blockchain Blueprint. Today, I am joined with another really great and excellent speaker I saw at the Hard Fork Decentralized event. And when I heard her speak, I felt we really needed to get her insights in terms of sustainability and giving something back to the community like Simona has. So I'd like to give her a brief intro before we get into it. So Simona is basically the co-founder and the CMO of Bounties Network as part of Consensus. And according to the Bounties Network website, and I quote, the Bounties Network empowers humans to incentivize and self-organize, from freelancing to grassroots social action and anything in between, whether it's for research, content translation, or video production. The Bounties Network lets you create projects, collaborate, and get paid for doing great work in any domain. So once again, thanks for joining us today, Simona. And so could you tell us right off the bat a bit more about yourself and what you do at Consensus and Bounties Network?
Sure, of course. So thank you so much, and I'm so pleased that we connected at Hard Fork Decentralized. And essentially, a little bit of background about myself. I have always kind of worked in communication and technology, and I got into the blockchain space at the beginning of this year. And it was really based on the belief that I have in blockchain and its potential to level out the playing field. And when I say leveling out the playing field, I mean in terms of access to information, to resource, and a global pool of work for everyone. Not just the traditional points of power, not just the traditional kind of geographical, socioeconomical powerhouses that have traditionally been, at the forefront of progress and economic, abundance, but rather empowering each and every one of us, wherever we are, to get a seat at that global economic table. And I think for me, that is definitely the core piece that drives me in everything that I do, and the core benefit that I believe blockchain brings to the table, and also that blockchain-based products will enable us to do and will enable us to reshape and redesign a lot of the kind of systems that we have right now.
Sure. And what is the model of Consensus and Bounties Network, and what's the difference between the two?
Okay, so the Consensus essentially started as think of it as a giant research and development lab. It started 3 years ago and was very much based on this idea that you can build products on the blockchain versus the blockchain just being something that currencies sit on top of. So classic example is Bitcoin. The way to think about this is Bitcoin cannot exist without the blockchain, but the blockchain can exist without Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is just one kind of store of value, but it is one application of the blockchain. And so Consensus was set up with this idea of, let us try to find out what the blockchain applies to, what industries, what type of use cases, what type of applications. Does it work for real estate? Does it work for law? Does it work for journalism? Does it work for supply chain? Does it work for freelancing? And all of these assumptions, and really going and testing them out. And so with the Bounties Network, we joined Consensus very much as a partnership to essentially allow us to test out the assumptions that we had. And 2018 has pretty much been a year where we have tested a lot of these assumptions out and have found out that actually blockchain-based bounties can be applied to a lot of different verticals. So whereas traditionally they have been used in very kind of technical use cases. So you would have bug bounties, bounties for code, so very much dev, very technical use cases. This year has been about broadening those use cases and broadening the applications of blockchain-based bounties across verticals. And what we have discovered is that actually you can have bounties for design, you can have them for content creation, you can have them for research, you can have them for even social and environmental impact, like I highlighted in my keynote at Hartford Decentralized in London. And so one of the main differentiators, I guess, is exactly that. So we are in a partnership with Consensus, where they supported us in finding all of this out, but we are, as the Bounties Network, we are a company.
Okay, so could you tell us about the project work in terms of stability that you've been involved with? What I'm thinking of is provide examples of some case studies like you mentioned last week, because you mentioned one thing that was really fascinating was the cleanup operation that you did in a beach in the Philippines. And then looking on your website, there were also some initiatives that you've done in Afghanistan and
Yes.
places, I believe. So do you want to get into that?
Sure. So again, just this all stems from this focus on accessibility and empowering people to be able to self-organize and be able to contribute to projects or to get involved in projects without the need for my physically being there, for my facilitating this, for my having to necessarily be actively involved in that process. And those two illustrations that you mentioned, so for instance, with Co2 Inspire is a project in Afghanistan that teaches girls to code. So one of the first things I did at the beginning of the year was to get in touch with Farishta, who is the lead on Co2 Inspire, and really start a conversation about, okay, what is the plan once the girls learn to code? And what is the plan in giving them access to that work, to those opportunities that, let's say, are open to a lot of people in the West or in the States or in Australia? You know, again, those classic points of power. And so we started having a conversation in terms of the girls starting to work on projects whilst they were still doing the course, whilst they were still studying, but also after they completed the coding course. Now, of course, what we found in the meantime was that actually a lot of them were good designers. A lot of them were interested in, other things aside coding and what that would mean. And this actually is the key piece here, because you don't necessarily need to be a developer to tap into this space. You don't need to have, in-depth technical skills to biddle, let's say, right? Because that's, although that's, it's a very annoying term, but it's, what I mean by that is we are all designers. We can all contribute to growing this, to making it something that can truly change the setups and the frameworks that we have had for so long. And I think empowering people to be able to do that based on their individual skills, regardless of their geographical location, their socioeconomical situation, the fact that they may or may not have a government that censors information or doesn't allow them to access, XYZ resources, that should not be a blocker. And that is the key here. It's empowering people and enabling them to tap into this. Again, it is not their fault that they are in those countries. It isn't something that should detract them. And if they want to leave at some point, hopefully, they have the means to do so, because they have, earned this by contributing to global projects. So that's Afghanistan. Of course, there are many complex details like what wallets are available in Afghanistan, what do we do about the converting the crypto into fiat, and all of these flows that need to become, number one, a lot more accessible, number two, a lot easier. But they are a work in progress, and so is the whole technology. And it is only by us doing these things and applying it to real life situations and getting real users will we ever solve them. So that is the Afghanistan project. And then with Bounties for the Oceans, which we had the Philippines pilot that I covered in my keynote, it stemmed from a desire to re-engineer the way social and environmental impact works. So what we see typically is you will have something like World Ocean Day. It's once every year. Everybody goes and uses the hashtag and posts things on social media, and then the next day they just go back to using plastic, for instance. And so the whole idea with that bounty was to try and re-engineer that flow and go, okay, this isn't just for a day. This is an ongoing thing whereby we are saying we are flipping the mechanism and the flow of money, whereby you do not have the classic model of a charity, i.e. a centralized organization, asking you, the individual, for a contribution, and then you have no visibility on what happens to that contribution. Does it ever make it to the intended purpose? Does it ever, have a tangible result? We just don't know. That whole flow is completely opaque. And so what we said was, actually, let's flip that. And instead of my asking you for money, I would like to reward each individual for their positive action. And so we set up the initial bounty that we set up was actually on a World Oceans Day, specifically with this goal of making it something that is way way surpasses that one day, and said if people submit verifiable proof of a cleanup, be it on a beach, in a park, on a street, wherever, and submit verifiable proof, i.e. a photo of that cleanup with the trash at that location, with a geolocation on it and a time and date stamp, or today's paper, like let's go basic, I will reward them with 10 DAI. So DAI is a stable coin, and the value is pegged to the value of $1. So we did that in partnership with MakerDAO, the creators of the DAI stablecoin. And we said, that is still ongoing. Anybody watching this can get involved and we can provide the link to it. And we had such an amazing response to that bounty, whereby we had people doing cleanups everywhere across America, across the UK. We had people in Tasmania, we had people in Venezuela, we had people in Romania doing it. There's this guy who started doing it every single day, where he was going to a different spot in Romania across this, like the banks of this river, and literally doing a cleanup every single day. And so it's that we realized, actually, this is a very, very powerful thing. And let us see what it means if we do it at a large scale with a large group and in a developing country, because it's all well and good, again, in the States or in the UK or even Romania, it's easy, right? I get a Coinbase, I do this, I do that, very easy. I have internet, I'm good. I have a smartphone. What happens if you go on the ground with 226 people we had in the pilot in Manila? We had to create another bounty because with the rewarding ETH, because we had a partner on the ground called coins.ph who did not support ERC20s, so couldn't support DAI. So we had to do to redo the bounty with ETH. The reason why we wanted to have a partner on the ground was to enable people to exchange the ETH into fiat. I am a big believer in closing the loop and making sure everything is in place should people want and need to exchange things into fiat for now, since they cannot really buy that much with crypto. And so we recreated this bounty. We ran the cleanup across 2 days. We had 226 people across the 2 days. And we learned lessons. The lessons we learned were that only 10% of people had smartphones. Out of those 10%, a lot of them were counterfeit. So you couldn't download anything from the App Store or Google Store. We also found out that the only wallet that was available to download was Trust Wallet out of all of the ones existing. We also found out that out of the people with smartphones, data is bought by the minute. And so if you are asking people to, number one, download a wallet on a beach in Manila Bay, where the connectivity isn't exactly high speed, you must understand that you are technically using up a lot of their data, and that could be used for other more important things. For instance, like, I don't know, accessing or communicating with friends and family, or doing a whole host of more important actions. So all of these learnings were incredibly powerful, certainly from the perspective of a lot of the products being built are being built in offices in San Francisco. And until you, or in hackathons in Berlin, until you go in on the ground and speak to the people who are actually using it and go with them and understand what regional and cultural differences and peculiarities are all about, we cannot begin to pretend that we are offering an alternative, if that alternative requires 10,000 hoops and also a lot of investment from the people on the ground.
Mm.
So the piece about understanding, again, your audience and understanding the people in each and every location or each and every vertical or each and every use case that you want into and you want to offer an alternative is key. Now, the beauty of what we did in Manila, aside, from an environmental perspective, let's say 3.3 tons of trash isn't necessarily that big, although it's a lot, but it's probably a drop in the ocean, right? Considering the scale of the problem. But what we did do was we gave the people the tools that they need to now continue submitting to that bounty and continue submitting to a whole host of bounties without my needing to be there. I don't need to be there. I don't need to go on the ground and organize these things. I don't need to physically hold their hand or even digitally hold their hand, because now they know the full process. Now they have the wallet downloaded on their phones. And in fact, we had quite a few of the people who were there on those 2 days continuing to do cleanups and continuing to submit to the bounty, which is again still open. People can, I'm in talks now with a group of students from Manila who want to do and continue doing or submitting to that bounty as a group, as a class, as individuals. And that is the point. That is the key. And of course, this is one use case, but the idea here is proving out that mechanism works. And once you prove out that mechanism works, you can reapply it and reapply it and reapply it and reapply it and make it as big or as small as you need it to be. So proving these things out is so important, particularly when you are potentially proposing a whole new stream of income for a lot of these people. You are proposing a means of learning by doing, which is, again, one of the more powerful things that you can do is giving people an opportunity to learn as they do and to earn as they learn. So I've been talking, I just noticed yesterday that Coinbase launched this whole earn platform. I've been talking about this, and bounties for learning for 4 or 5 months. Because again, as you go into areas where people have to choose between education and earning money because they need to, you are essentially creating an environment or a situation where they can do that, where they can earn as they learn, where they can further their skills, where they can become the best version of themselves. And I am there to enable them to do this as individuals, as communities. And then you have the individuals interacting with each other, the communities interacting with each other. And that, I feel, is another key piece of what blockchain offers us, because you no longer have this disparity between, oh, you have to go for each different product that you use, you have a different login, you have a different community, you have a different setup, you have a different environment, you have different rules, you have different, all sorts of just different and siloed. Whereas on the blockchain, you could have your one identity, your one key that takes you through all of these different, it's almost like a range of rooms or a range of different environments, but you're still you. You don't have to have, several different identities, let's say, to access all of these different products or spaces. And so that's another key piece that as we develop even further, and as we grow the product, and as we grow as an ecosystem, and as we get more and more people involved and we gain broader adoption, I feel that is certainly where Bounties is going. It is about creating these collaborative communities that exist and grow and provide great value for their members and the community itself.
Well, one thing I love about this initiative that you've just explained is that I love how community driven it is. And I think for, like, we're more than the collective sum of our parts, as it were. So if this was an individual thing, I don't think it would work as well as being in a community. And that's what I love about it. So do you think this could work in, say, a somewhere like here, where there are people who are less advantaged, then, because there's also a big wealth disparity over here and in the Western world as well. So do you think that something could work just as well as it did in, the Philippines, for instance?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's a model. So one of the other things that we wanted to achieve with the pilot in the Philippines is actually give that use case for organizations, let's say the WWF as an example, use it as a pattern for action, for different initiatives, for different campaigns, that they could actually use it to engage local communities and local individuals. And I see no reason why they cannot be applied to a whole host of, and by a whole host of organizations here. It is a model that, again, is very low lift from an admin perspective. I mean, I know that we flew over to Manila to run this, but at the end of the day, that was a one-time thing. And it was also because I wanted to document it all so that we make sure that we can show the world and show others that it can be done and how it can be done. So from that perspective, and from an admin perspective, it is an incredibly low lift way of doing things, way of getting people to, again, have that positive action, empowering them to have this gateway to potentially a pool of work that could help them improve their situation, that could help them change their situation, that could help equip them with what they need to, then access a whole host of other options that maybe were not available to them to begin with. And so there is absolutely no reason why this cannot be applied to any location. What I think the key is the partnerships on the ground. So for instance, having partners who can provide certain things for you. So again, let's say the WWF has a range of initiatives, and we would go in partnership with them and provide the means to achieve the goals that they have by engaging and working with the community. So that is a win-win situation, and not flying people in, for instance, to do a service that or do or perform an action that could easily be done with individuals and communities on the ground. And I think that is, again, that's where the understanding and that's where the shift lies, is engaging and empowering individuals and communities wherever they are to self-organize, to tap into new streams of income, to contribute to certain initiatives, be they the UN initiatives or whatever range of different projects and verticals. So yes, my short answer is yes.
Is your well, one of your, I think we've touched upon this a little bit, but is one of your main aims to, like, specifically to eradicate poverty permanently?
I think that's such a big goal that for me to say that outright, I wouldn't feel necessarily comfortable saying that. I'm a big believer in doing rather than saying. I'm always of the opinion that if you're gonna talk the talk, you should walk the walk. I am providing a tool and a means that can facilitate that. Now, nothing exists in a vacuum. We are very much about that collaborative field. That collaboration is the key that I feel will redefine the economy and will drive these peer-to-peer economies and this community-to-community and individual-to-individual. So I think we can enable it. I think it's a big piece that will need a lot of collaboration, and it will need a change in thinking as to how we achieve that. And we have a long road ahead of us, but we have already achieved so much this year that I'm incredibly optimistic and excited about what we can deliver, what we can build on, what we can achieve when and based on the experience that we have had. Because one of the main things is everything that we've learned this year has informed every decision that we are making for what we are building, refining, broadening in terms of this collaborative communities that we are creating. And I feel that they should be open to anyone. In fact, this is brilliant. So it just reminded me, there's a guy called Brandon who we just started getting involved in a couple of initiatives called with Crypto Christmas. So Crypto Christmas is essentially, there's two projects that are, one of them is supporting families in Venezuela by donating actual fiat for cards bought with ETH. So they're digital cards that you basically buy. They're all different prices. So I just did one with 1 ETH. And then every card that you buy, that equivalent is donated to this organization that essentially buys food and supplies for Venezuelan families. And one of the things that we were doing is to be able to create the designs and have like nice cards that people would want to buy and share for Christmas. We had quite a few bounties up for, and some of them are still up to design some of these cards. And it's a really great story because this kid, Brandon, sent us a message saying, thank you so much for creating these. I just came across this and I fulfilled a few of the bounties. He was homeless for a very long time and had just found this guy who basically offered to put him up in a room in his house. And so, and give him an old computer and obviously access to internet and so on. So Brandon had been just like glued to this computer and found some of these bounties. It was his first interaction with bounties, but he was very much like, that was my in to this and to a community and to really broadening what he thought was possible in terms of not only earning an income, but also tapping into this community that otherwise potentially he wouldn't have had access to. And that is something that is incredibly powerful in terms of getting people into or back into a societal construct that will help them, have connections, have human connections, have, again, that access to resource, to information, to a shoulder to cry on, or an understanding ear, or all of that we, for so many of us, is completely taken for granted, but that is so important and should be an option and should be a normal occurrence for everyone.
That's fantastic, especially using a case such as Venezuela, which, as we know, is in absolutely dire straits at this moment in time. So in terms of startup businesses that want to do exactly what Bounties Network are doing, how can they benefit from using the blockchain and using the Ethereum kind of blockchain to do what you do?
So it depends what they want to do. So the way we can help them is obviously bounties are the outsourcing of work or the ability to contribute to global projects that are set up by individuals, by organizations, and so on. Now, if they want to be able to tap into this global, widespread, we've got people in our community across all 6 continents. And the idea here is that you are essentially enabling people to tap into this high quality pool of individuals that are very, very skilled across a range of different verticals, so they can tap into that. Like I say, the common use cases that we have had for bounties are translations, design, content creation, editing, research, music, social impact again, or they can very much build on top of our protocol. Our API is, all our code is completely open source, of course. So if they wanted to create their own bounty networks on top of the protocol, they can do. And I'm happy to share all of this information and more with everybody watching. So our whole goal, again, is collaboration. I think the key is making sure that we find the best ways to collaborate and the best use cases. So I'm more than happy to speak to anyone who would like to have that conversation and figure out how something like a bounty campaign, something like the Bounties Network, something like the way we interact and create communities could be beneficial to their particular use case, to the particular audience, to their particular work, and then figure something out. Because I think a lot of it is, yes, the actual technology is very, very flexible, but I think sometimes people need a little bit of help in terms of ideation and in terms of creatively thinking about how the technology can apply to their very specific use case, which is why I've spent, and we have as a team have spent a lot of 2018 really working with a lot of projects and understanding what they want to achieve and how they want to impact the world, and then figuring out the best avenue.
And what advice would you give for a startup business that want to use blockchain technology, not just for sustainability or charity or that sort of thing, but on a broader scale?
So I think the main benefits are the fact that the payments, so first of all, the payments are a very important piece, where the people fulfilling the bounties do not get charged. So you have so many Web2, I guess, freelancing platforms that charge a lot. Plus, they have a lot of currency conversion fees, loss of money in those microtransactions that are really not a necessary thing. Like with crypto, it goes from my wallet to your wallet, and that is it. Also, the ability to contribute to a project or to a bounty, and it almost sits, so everything, all the funds sit almost in escrow. So with a bounty, the money, the pot in the bounty actually is in the smart contract. So I don't have hands on it. The person who just contributed doesn't have hands on it, which means that pot, which is why it was so important in the Philippines and from a charity perspective, is that pot will only ever go to the payout of each individual contribution. Nothing else goes anywhere else. That pot will always go to those to that particular person or to those particular people, which means you can track it, which means that whole transparency, everything that was opaque now is transparent. There's no, oh, we spent 20% on admin, oh, we spent 50% on marketing. No, that pot goes to the people doing it. And so in terms of potentially making your money go further is a big option. And that doesn't mean that it is cheap labor. And it definitely does not mean that we need to perpetuate this cheap labor situation that has plagued the freelance community for a hell of a long time, because it's always a race to the bottom. We need to change that, and we need to completely eradicate that, because the reason why we found ourselves in that situation in Web 2 is because of these fees, because of the centralized organizations that are running the show. So if we re-engineer that, it means that people can get rewarded appropriately for their time, for their skill, and they can participate in projects that they actually care about. The amount of times I speak to people that say, oh, I'd love to get involved in a social or environmental impact campaign, but I just don't have the time, or I don't have the cash. Well, how about we reward people for their contribution? How about we appreciate people's time? How about we care about somebody wanting to grow their business and wanting to do it based on quality work or with quality work? And how about somebody who wants to start out and build a reputation and a portfolio and a body of work based on projects that they genuinely want to work on and contribute to? So it's a whole shift in the way we've done things. And I think for a lot of people, that's a very exciting piece. And I think it certainly is for me. And I definitely think it's the way things are going, and it's where things should go, because we should all, not just work to live, but actually, just participate in this global collaborative world that hopefully we're building.
It's interesting you mentioned something along the lines of the direction that we're going in just now. I honestly believe that charities, if not already, should be looking at these models. And I'm not necessarily talking about the smaller ones. I'm talking the ones such as
the big ones.
Yeah, Amnesty International, Oxfam, and so on and so forth. Have they? You've mentioned you've worked with WWF before. Have any other charities approached you?
No. And one of the main things I feel, and this is with any legacy big company, charities are no different. They're very risk adverse. And so they will need, for a lot of them, like some will be a lot more adventurous, let's say, than others. For instance, WWF is. But they still need a lot of reassurance. They still need a lot of use case. They still need a lot of proof before they can feel comfortable going on this very, very new, very, very kind of complex, let's say, route or direction. Because again, as with any technology, until you feel fully comfortable, or somebody within the chain of decision making, somebody within the organization feels comfortable with it, you're just not going to have movement, and you're also not going to have speedy movement. So I think little by little, I think pilot by pilot, I think bit by bit, is how we're gonna affect this change.
Mm. Do you have anything else to add that I might not have brought up?
I would say the main thing that I always encourage people to do is to get involved and test it and play with some of the applications that are already live. The Bounties network is a great use case, because we've actually not only been live on mainnet since October 2017, but we've also put a lot of work into our UX. So our user experience and user flow is actually massively superior to anything else that is out there right now. And I would love for us to share a few different bounties that people can participate in, because I am a big believer in learning by doing, and I am a big believer in testing things out. And so if once people have, let's say, completed some of these bounties, I would love to get ideas from people. I would love to get their thoughts on what they would like to see, how they would like to change the way things are. Because until, the more perspectives we have and the more ideas we have, that's where we get that's where we get that movement, that's where we get that change. And so I would encourage them to think about the possibilities, think about potentially how they could use, let's say, the Bounties network to bring a blockchain piece into whatever it is that they're doing now. And also keep in mind that when they complete a bounty, or when they create the bounty, they change the blockchain forever. So whatever it is that they do is there forever, which a lot of people find exciting, a lot of people find daunting, but it's, they are actively participating in it all. So I'd say get involved. It's really cool.
Fantastic. And thank you so much for your time, Simona. If people want to find you or get in touch, what's the best way of them doing so?
So you can share my email, of course. I'm on Twitter. I'm always on Twitter. It never ends. It never sleeps.
That's how I found you.
There you go. So, and you know that I don't. Yes, responding straight away. So Twitter is a very good and easy medium. And then I would say that if we stick to those, it's a lot easier than starting to go into Wire and Telegram and all of the other ones, because it just becomes a little bit chaotic. But yeah, I'm at sim_pop on Twitter. Share my email. I would love for us to share a few of those bounties and a few of the wrap up of the Manila project. I think is very, very cool for people to understand a little bit more about what we did and see some of the images that we have from there. So and hopefully continue the conversation. I would love to maybe have a Q&A with people, have an AMA. I'm more than happy and more than available to answer any of the questions, because I know that there tend to be a lot.
Fantastic. So to clarify, your Twitter handle is sim_pop.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, Simona, thank you so much for your time. This has been a wonderful interview and it's so empowering for people who want to move forward in this space. And it's to know that, it doesn't have to be a daunting experience whatsoever.
That's right. And thank you so much. And it was awesome to meet you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad we did this.
Yes, same.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks.